Okay, that's a little. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm glad we have such a big crowd and there is no rain. Very happy there's no rain. Yeah. So, for Waukesha, yesterday was a tremendous day. The representatives of each of the Great Lakes governors unanimously approved our application to borrow and return Great Lakes water. The importance of this decision is simple. Our families and employers need a new water supply, one that is not only safe, but reliable and sustainable for the long term. No community can thrive without meeting that basic need for drinking water, and there has been no higher priority for myself, for the Common Council, and for the Water Utility Commission and the staff of the Water Utility. A total of 10 states and provinces reviewed the facts of our case and agreed that borrowing and returning Lake Michigan water is our only reasonable alternative. Every alternative was at least as expensive, but would cause significant and unsustainable harm to our environment. Our city has studied this issue for well over a decade. Regional planners studied it for 5 years. The Department of Natural Resources spent 5 years thoroughly scrutinizing every aspect of our 3,000+ page application. I cannot thank the DNR staff and leadership enough. Countless individuals were involved in the review, and I'm sure that the effort involved great personal sacrifices for many. I can't see him right now, but
they're in the back.
There we go. I want to commend Governor Scott Walker and DNR Secretary Kathy Stepp for letting the staff do their jobs. We did not always appreciate the way the DNR held our feet to the fire, but their extreme diligence impressed and helped convince the other states of the merits of our proposal. Similarly, I want to thank the other states and provinces for their own reviews. They all provided tremendous resources and time to their own reviews in order to be sure that the law of the Great Lakes Compact was properly applied to the scientific facts of our case. Thank you to the Great Lakes governors and premiers, to their representatives, and to their staff for their dedication and their good faith. They proved that the compact is working. Yesterday's approval by the other Great Lakes states was the biggest achievement so far in our long effort. But there is still more work to be done. We will immediately begin the process of hiring engineering consultants to help guide the project. We will work with those consultants to determine the schedule for design, permitting, easement acquisition, and more. The entire project will take several years, but we will move as quickly as possible. The cost of the project is high, but there were no cheaper alternatives. We will continue to work with Senator Ron Johnson, Senator Tammy Baldwin, and Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner to identify federal grant opportunities that can help us reduce the costs and the rate impacts of this public health project. We also work with the state of Wisconsin to identify loan opportunities or other funding. We are also committed to continuing to implement and refine our water conservation programs. Reducing water demand does not just help preserve natural resources, it helps residents and businesses reduce the impacts of our rate increase. So in conclusion, thank you again to all the regulators, to the Waukesha officials and staff, and to our local residents and businesses for your help and support in this tremendous achievement by the City of Waukesha. We look forward to continuing our work to provide a safe, sustainable water supply for the people of the City of Waukesha. Thank you very much. I'm now going to introduce my friend, County Executive Paul Farrell, who also has some comments.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I'm happy to be here with Governor Walker, with Secretary Stepp, and with Mayor Riley as we really mark the end of the first step in the journey for clean water for the City of Waukesha. You know, as County Executive, one of my priorities and my big priority is economic development. We look at 37 municipalities across this county, and their goal is to provide a great quality of life. As we look at economic growth, we see that the decision by the council yesterday helps to solidify that for the City of Waukesha. As we continue to grow on, this is our key in the county, is growing and have that growth capability. We, last month, just penned a partnership for a new economic development organization. And what we've heard from businesses throughout that time is they want stability, they want consistency, especially from the public sector. We're seeing in the decisions like this and the work that was gone through with the city to get this accomplished is one of those keys. So I got to congratulate Mayor Dan Dukniak from the water system and all the hard work that the city has put in. Again, I'll reiterate Kathy Stepp and the entire Department of DNR for what they've done. Their tireless work over the last decade has gotten to the point we are today. We are one step closer to a clean source of water for the city of Waukesha. And that's what we continue to strive for, is looking for that stability throughout our county. So it's a great day to be here. It's a great day to be part of one of the 37 municipalities that we partner with to see this happen for you guys. We look forward to helping you throughout the process wherever we can and continue this forward to see the completion. So with that, I'd love to introduce Secretary Kathy Stepp from the DNR.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I just want to express my deep appreciation to all of the parties that have been involved in the process for so many years. I especially want to take a moment to acknowledge and express appreciation for my staff, who have given more than their all to this project in making sure that all of the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed, that the very difficult technical questions had been answered so that we were ready to represent Wisconsin with this package in front of the Compact Council, feeling confident that we were making the right decisions and being able to put environmental protection front and center, as well as the very important resource that was needed here in Waukesha for residents, which is clean drinking water. It's been an honor to be a part of this. I congratulate the entire region, because this is indeed a fantastic day, not just for this region, but for Wisconsin and for Great Lakes and environmental protection and sustainability for many years going forward. So thank you again. And I now get the very distinct honor to introduce my boss, the governor from the great state of Wisconsin, Scott Walker.
Well, this vote that was taken within the last 24 hours shows that the compact works. That's really what the most important headline should be: the compact works. Because you see a great collaboration, and I too want to add my thanks first and foremost to the DNR staff, the Department of Natural Resources staff. As the mayor alluded to, it may have been a rigorous process, but it was well worth it, because for 5 years a rigorous process got us to the point where you could see the other Great Lakes leaders said, hey, they did their homework. They checked into this, they knew this. We had to make slight modifications, but really fairly minimal compared to what would have been the case had we not had the state of Wisconsin do the rigorous review that was done. I want to thank all the staff throughout all the many years that have been involved with this, and really to thank the leaders here in Waukesha and Waukesha County. I particularly want to thank the mayor and the county executive, but I know this goes much broader than that, as well as their leadership with the Common Council, the county board, all the business and civic leaders here, and it goes back many years back. Larry, it's good to see you, and thinking about previous mayors and the councils of the past, thinking about, I used to be a county executive. I can remember both Dans talking about it, Dan Finley and Dan Vracas talking about it along the way. This really, though, ultimately shows that science triumphs over politics, that if you get the science right, that water is important, public health is important, economic development is important, infrastructure is important. All these things are tied together with this victory here for Waukesha, for the state, but really for the compact. I know in talking to one of my fellow governors just the other day, and it's good not only for the region, but thanks, I see the mayor of Oak Creek here as well. It's good for regional cooperation with this, and really thinking about, I mean, that's what we think about the M7. That's what it is about, putting a regional effort together when it makes sense for based on science and mutual shared interest. But I talked to one of my fellow mayors the other day, and he was talking about governors the other day, and he was talking about the dynamics of this. And we thought back to several years ago. We kind of gave for a while, the council, then the Council of Great Lakes Governors, had been kind of dormant. The staff had met, but the governors hadn't met. And so we had a meeting several years ago at Mackinac Island. Governor Schneider hosted us there. And I remember giving that first meeting that I was able to attend as governor a report as to kind of what the status was, just to bring people up to speed, because with the compact, all the governors and the premiers then were invited as guests. We're very interested in it. We've subsequently since, in fact, last year about this time, we had a meeting in Quebec City. We've changed the name and broadened the base of involvement so that it's the Conference of Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers. And as was alluded to, all of the governors as well as the premiers had a chance to review this. Their staff had a chance to look at it. Again, slight modifications made, of which we were fully committed to implementing going forward. But they looked at the science and they said, this is exactly as the mayor said, this is about borrowing water from the Great Lakes and sending it back, arguably sending it back the same or greater when it comes to how clean it is, as well as the volume of the water. And this is the way to do this. And it is a high bar, so it is fairly unlikely that other places throughout the Great Lakes will do this. But if there's a community like Waukesha that's interested, they know that the bar has been set high, and they have to achieve that or be greater going forward. That means that the compact works not just for Waukesha, not just for this region, not for this, just for the state, but the compact works for all of us who understand the value of the Great Lakes, the value that we have not just here in this country but around the world, with the value of fresh, clean water in the largest supply possible, and the fact that we take it very seriously. We don't take it for granted. We take it very seriously, and we expect others throughout this region to do the same. This is a triumph in all those many counts. So thank you to everybody who's been a part of that, so many of whom are represented here today. Congratulations.
Okay, what we'll do now is, first of all, open it up for questions regarding Waukesha's water application and approval by the regional body and compact council. Any questions?
Yeah, we think, again, this is an issue where it's not just important for Waukesha or Wisconsin, but again, if other, particularly Great Lakes states as well as Quebec and Ontario on their own right in Canada, but particularly the United States, if other jurisdictions were going to look to do something like this in the future, I think there would be a reasonable expectation that in order to do it right, to abide by the compact, they need to do it in a way that, you know, there's a certain cost, as the mayor talked about, and so we would be supportive of working both at the state level, but certainly with our colleagues at the federal level.
Mayor Riley and Secretary, I know the DNR has given a firm June 2018 deadline to make sure that Waukesha had a new water source. Does that mean that it needs to be by June 2018 that Lake Michigan water will be flowing here?
I'll answer. What we plan on doing is figuring out a timeline. That means that our engineers and have to go through the process of getting the figure out when we're going to be getting permits, figure out when we can do construction. Once we have that timeline put together, we will then be going to the DNR and to the EPA and talking to them about that deadline. It does not appear that we will have water flowing from the Great Lakes by the June 2018 deadline.
What's construction going to look like? You're basically retrofitting a city with whole new infrastructure. Are you going to be digging up neighborhoods? What's it going to be like?
We've actually already been working on installing water mains that are needed in the city of Waukesha, and so as you go out on the bypass, you see that construction work happening right now. What's going to happen in the city of Waukesha is we're going to continue that construction work. The mains that will be going from here to Oak Creek will be built probably starting in 1 to 2.5 years or so.
So what about in neighborhoods?
In neighborhoods, the water mains are already in. We already have the mains in our neighborhoods. We don't have to tear up the streets to put in all new mains. We have a constant process where we're always replacing mains as they get old enough. The mains that are in the ground, unless they're have a problem with them, they're going to stay in the ground. We don't need to replace mains throughout our neighborhoods. It's been preliminary looked at, and it'll be refined once we get additional consultants and we look at all the permitting issues. The estimated impact is that rates will go up 2 to 3 times, and that would be under any option that we have. We have a water supply that is not sustainable, and we looked at all the options we looked at cost $207 million or more, and or right around there. So under any option that we had, we would need to raise our rates, and we're going to be working to try to reduce those costs for our ratepayers as much as possible. But our rates will go up, and our rates would go up no matter what. Right now, the cost of water for the average house is about $320 per year. It is expected to go up to about $900 a year at the worst case scenario.
Growth for Waukesha County at the expense of counties to the east?
No, it's about public health. For everyone who lives in the city of Waukesha, we heard a lot about other jurisdictions around the country that had water problems. I don't want water problems anywhere in Wisconsin. I don't care whether it's in Milwaukee or Waukesha or Oak Creek or anywhere else. I want the people of the state to be safe. A court has made it clear that there's an expectation that there is a safe water source. You had a whole series of governors, Republican and Democrat alike, from the full span of the political spectrum, from very conservative, very liberal, all sign off on this because they share the same interest we do, whether they represent people in Waukesha or not, is they believe that people should have clean water. And that's what this is about. This is about public health and access to clean water.
I'm sorry, just real quick, I just want to add to that too, is we also had the 8 Great Lakes governors and their representatives, as well as the 2 Canadian provinces, make a determination that Waukesha has no other reasonable alternative source of water other than Great Lakes water. So.
Yeah, it's good for 2 reasons on that. One, it's pretty hard to make a long-term compelling argument for economic growth and development if you don't have a clear, clean water supply. And so this is it. The mayor talked about, again, when push came to shove, I give credit to my colleagues because a number of them politically in both parties could have taken an easy chip shot and said, no, we're going to say no. But they actually listened to Kathy's counterparts, the equivalent agencies that do environmental protection in each of their states, and they realized, as the mayor said, this was the most logical way to guarantee clean water for the future. This is why I say this is a triumph of science over politics. It would have been very easy for any number of other Great Lakes states governors to say no for political reasons, but instead they understood that for the people here, this is not a political issue, this is a public health issue. To the point that dealing with that, having a viable, reasonable solution for public health, ensuring that you have good quality, clean water going forward, sure, that's going to be a benefit, just like good schools and higher education and a good workforce are all key elements to economic development. The other part, as you alluded to, as you continue to see improvements here, this is going to have an impact from a public infrastructure standpoint, public works project. You're going to see a lot of good men and women. That's why a lot of the operating engineers I see are here, because they understand it's going to put people to work building this all the way through to the Great Lakes and back, and then maintaining it. So it's good for all the men and women who get paid good wages and good salaries, and then the economic impacts they have here. And a lot of those folks don't just work in Waukesha or Waukesha County. They live in Milwaukee County and Racine County and places all throughout this region. So it's good for everybody in the region. Again, I tell them to look at the same science that the governors did. I mean, that's why the guy behind you, the mayor of Oak Creek, can tell you exactly what's going on. He understands, just like people. I mean, there will be people in Racine County who will, for political purposes, make an argument about this. But the people who were charged with having to make a fundamental decision on this were Democrats and Republicans alike. They looked at the science and said, this is borrowing the water, bringing it back, arguably as clean or cleaner than it was taken in the first place. And I won't go into a whole litany of other things about other issues that people could argue about in terms of how clean Lake Michigan water is. It won't be because of this issue that there should be concern about water in the Great Lakes. There are plenty of other issues. including some of our neighbors to the south and what happens in certain rivers and byways that we should be mindful of when it comes to the clean water in this region. But it will not be because of this process. It is precisely why the process was so rigorous through the Department of Natural Resources and why the other Great Lakes leaders made sure there were additional modifications and improvements made to guarantee it was done right. But any other talk runs flat in the face of the argument of the scientific basis upon which this decision was made. You know what, I'll talk to you as an aside just because unless you're going to be really creative and tie water into that, I'm sure the delegates probably drink some water at the convention, but I'm going to stay just on topic for right now.
Mayor, what are the economics in terms of how much is this project going to cost and how much are you going to pay Oak Creek?
The estimated cost of the construction is $207 million. That estimate is a couple years old. It will be, like I said, we're going to be hiring consultants. We have a lot of work to do in figuring out what the costs are, what the route is, what permits are required, going through the process of getting those permits. So our best estimate at this point is $207 million. What we're paying Oak Creek, that's dependent upon their water rates. Off the top of my head, I don't know the cost of those rates.
Talked about, at least I've run the same animation like 6 times. I mean, you're going to have a pipeline. It's going to be above ground. Is it going to be like a Keystone pipeline? There's denying.
No, the pipeline, right away I can tell you the pipeline will be underground. And it carries water. Or treated water.
Clean water.
Yes.
One, or is it?
No, it'll be 2. One pipeline to bring water from Oak Creek to Waukesha. One pipeline to bring treated water, clean treated water, back to the Root River, ultimately going back into Lake Michigan. Are we going to use an existing treatment facility? Yes, we have a state-of-the-art treatment facility. I'll put it up against any wastewater treatment facility in the Midwest. We're in the process of upgrading that facility. We will meet all the state requirements for treated water, and we'll exceed them.
Calls to Rick Snyder, Mark Dayton, doing any deals with these other states to get approval?
No deals. I talked to one of the governors the other day just about the issue. I had a question how the process was going, but I didn't have to lobby anybody. I purposely didn't call other governors. I was really ready and willing and able to, but I left it largely on the secretary and the staff, the remarkable staff at the Department of Natural Resources, as well as the team, particularly with the Waukesha Water Utility, who for years have been out front working with their colleagues on this, precisely because I didn't want it to be a political issue. I didn't want it to be because I twisted arms or I begged people or did anything else out there. I understand how important it is, but we thought the best case to be made was the science. And when push came to shove, that's why I give a hat tip to my colleagues, because there were many political pressures in other parts of the region that would have made it very easy for any one of them to say no. I think they took the responsibility very highly. And I also say it's not just that the compact works because we're here today, but frankly, any of us who followed the compact for some time know that if we'd done 5 years of rigorous review, if we'd had all these conditions, if we'd taken all these steps, and anyone had said no, I think it's very likely whether it was Waukesha or someone else in the future would have probably litigated this, and the question would have been, would the compact even be able to be upheld at that point? And it's very conceivable it would not have. So this is not just a triumph of Waukesha prevailing here. It keeps the compact itself in place because it shows that it works if you meet the high bar and the high measure of clean water.
And I'll just follow up on that. Dan Dukniak and I met with many of the governor's representatives and discussed our application. Every single time, it was always about the facts of our application and what the compact says. It was never about the politics. So that's the way I see that this decision was made. It was about the facts of the application, Waukesha's application, and answering any questions that the governor's representatives may have, and they base their decision upon the facts of our application and what the compact says.
Just one other quick thing on that. just kind of go along with what the mayor said, for years we've been talking about it. So I don't want to give you the misconception that we haven't talked about it, but not from a lobbying standpoint. We gave a briefing when we were in Mackinac Island. We gave a briefing at the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago. I gave a briefing in Quebec City last year because the other governors and their staffs, obviously, and premiers, as well as have expanded the circle, are very interested in this. They wanted to know what the update was. I think that's precisely why we got to the point that we are, because we've been completely and totally transparent throughout this process. Every step of the way, we've told people what we were doing, why we were doing it, how we were doing it. It wasn't something that any of the governors, or for that matter, the premiers that looked at this, were rushed into. They knew the process. We had talked about it, but we just felt in the end we wanted to make sure, as the mayor said, that they were making those decisions based on science, not based on political allegiance or popularity or anything else. And again, that's why the science triumphed.
How much money have you spent between the city and the state on the preparation for this? All the years of study, all the years of lobbying, for lack of a better word. What's it been? What's the cost been to Waukesha taxpayers and state taxpayers?
Well, I'll answer for the city of Waukesha, not for the state. Our costs are for the ratepayers, not for the taxpayers. There's a slight difference there. The water utility is the one paying the cost of this. The last number I heard was a little more than $5 million.
The people from Wisconsin DNR who've been working on this project for so many years also have lots of other job responsibilities, so it'd be really impossible to be able to differentiate the amount of hours they spent just on this versus other things during their workday. But certainly since I've come into office, department staff have been working on the project for 5.5 years.
All right, thank you very much. And for the Common Council members here and Water Utility Commissioners, I'd like to have a quick picture, if you can come up with the Governor and Paul Farrell, Kathy Stepp, and Larry, could you also join us too?